Shenuka, good morning. Only you and me in the classroom yet, so we can wait 1 or 2 minutes and then we can start. Can you hear me? Shenuka, can you hear me? Yeah. Good morning, Shenu. All right, so we'll basically what our plans today is that we are trying to discuss some questions. So I have uploaded some selected questions. So we'll see to start it from the where what the best question that we have some questions from SME, and then we have some questions from sources of financing, and then 5 C's of credit sort of thing, right? Microfinancing, and then business units, and then finally with the non-financial tools, because right now we have done a couple of questions for working capital, project appraisal, and then break even, and the MCQs actually we have done. So this area there where we can cover some of questions which could be useful to say to touch the other areas also, right? So we'll start from the question number 1. So that is on SME financing, right? So the question basically tells SME development through SME financing has become a challenge and imperative because of many reasons. Why SME can, how SMEs can contribute to the development of the economy as per the national policy framework for SME development Sri Lanka, 6 policy interventions. What are the challenges? What are the sources of financing for SME in Sri Lanka? Right. So until others join, so let's take some time and basically, I will give you a kind of some snapshot of SME where that you need to know. So prior to the exam, so that we can together discuss that, right? Right. Hope you can see the board, Shenuka, right? Right. So SME, right? What we need to know is there are a couple of areas, right? I think we have discussed in the classroom, but you need to know that. So first you need to know the definition of SME. What is SME? How we're going to define the SME, right? And what are the criteria of SME kind of thing we need to know. And then we need to know the importance or significance or role, basically. This is another question that we can come across in SME financing, where we need to understand what is the role of SME in national economy, in economic development, the development of a country. So like that, they might ask questions to that extent. So we need to know what's the importance, significance, or the role of SME. Then they might ask about questions like what are the problems faced by SME? So what are the issues or problems faced by SME? I think we have discussed in the classroom, but you need to know that. So sometimes the examiner would ask, so what type of problems faced by the SME? Similarly, problems faced by banks, right? Not only SME, banks also facing some problems when we are undertaking SME lending. For example, the absence of collateral is a kind of an issue for us. Similarly, SMEs. or maybe not transparent financials, it's a issue for us because we can't evaluate the customer properly. So basically, so problems faced by SME, problems faced by banks, or there could be another sort of thing, maybe challenges also. Challenges in SME finance. It could be sometimes beyond bank or customers' purview, or maybe within their control. It might be linked to the problems and the problems faced by the banks and the SME, but the questions could be like this. It could be something about what are the challenges faced by. So that again we need to understand. Then they might ask, they might interested to know what are the products and services we can offer to SME. So like on balance sheet, off balance sheet products, or SME plus like financial advisory services, the kind of thing that we need to know. I think last time when we are undertaking theory, so I have basically given what are the things that that we need to know about. There are 10-12 products, so you need to kind of memorize if you are going to answer that. Then sources of finance. Sources of finance. I think we discussed about a lesson for this, right? So where we are supposed to know what are the sources of financing, right? And then long term, short term, right? And those things. And then sources, right? So those are some of the things that let's just highlight because we need to know definitions, importance, problems faced by SME, problems faced by bank, challenges in the semi-sector, product services, sources of financing, and maybe what are the solutions or remedies for SME problems. Because we can't say that there are some problems, there are some issues, right? So you need to develop some remedies. The remedies could come from customer itself, bank, so other financial institution like central bank and all that. So there may be several other stakeholders to support the SME to come up with these problems. So like that, when you say that SME, because generally we get 1 or 2 questions from SME sector, SME area. So this is like a snapshot that you need to be aware with whenever we are answering the type of question, right? So if you go through the past papers, and you can get an idea about these things, so you might be able to catch up or maybe answer to that type of questions, right? Okay, now we are trying to answer the particular question. Part 1 is about explain how SME can contribute the development and economy. Actually, we have discussed this in past papers also, like our theory class also, right? They ask a question about how SME can contribute to the development and economy. Can you suggest 1 or 2 areas how they can contribute? What are the possible contributions from SME towards economic development? Sanjeev, Shenuka, you can suggest what are the things that how they can contribute. Obviously, they can contribute towards GDP growth, right? So because GDP is consists of agri, manufacturing, and services. So when you talk about these 3 sectors, so most of the businesses or customers falling under these 3 segments. So whenever they do something, so whenever they produce something, so that basically helps to contribute these 3 sectors. So that mainly tells that there is a kind of a positive contribution towards the GDP growth. That's one. Any other? What are the things that we can suggest? Employment creation. Very good, Sanjeev, because maybe more than 50% of entities are like relating to SME sector, so then they can create employment opportunities to most of the people, so that basically it tells that it helps to employment creation. Any other? They can support for import substitutions, right? One thing is, now most of the products we were supposed to, we got used to import. Instead, what we could do is, if we can produce some of the items in order to substitute those imports, so that helps us a lot, right? So that we call import substitution. So import substitution, you can save most of the foreign exchange that you incur on imports. The other one is, you can support exports, right? Because if you manufacture things, and if you are promoting, if you are into the export sector, then again you can earn foreign exchange. So two way. One thing is import substitution is one SME can support, and then they can promote, they can develop export sector as well. So like there are, we are now learning four. One thing is GDP contribution, employment creation, import substitution, export promotion. So any other? How the SMEs, what they can do, what they could do? They can basically, they can do example like innovation on new product processes, markets, like that. They can do innovations also, because now you are starting very small, right? As small companies, small entities, but then you can innovate in a small way. Example, now during the COVID-19 lockdown, if you remember, so many entrepreneurs, so many Sri Lankans come up with small innovations things, not a kind of very large scale, but small scale. They come up with different attire to medical equipment to and all that. So what basically helps them is like, so then you can go to a kind of the in a mass market once you do it in a mega scale. So by innovating product, services, markets, what happened? Then you can create a bigger market. So that might help to import substitution again, and maybe to develop a bigger product. So even you can think of exporting. So that's another. So they can do innovation also. They can do supply raw materials for bigger industries. Now what happened might be, now they can so develop, or they can produce, or they can give raw material to bigger companies. So if not, what happened is, so they might have to import it and give to the large scale industries. Presentation. Okay. Then another one could be you might use the raw materials, and then that could be input to the bigger company. So that what could happen is, one way that you get the money, because as SME, because you are inputting, you are providing as a raw material, whereas while that basically you are discouraging those raw materials coming from foreign countries. So then many number of players, and you are got together and do this kind of a thing, will add value to the economy. So like that, there may be 5-6 points that you can mention SME contribution towards the country's economy. Now during the normal class also we learned about kind of significance or the importance of the SME, right? Excuse. දැන් හරිනේ දැන් එතකොට මම අපව හරි මේ කියන්නේ මේ බෝඩ් එකට ගියා කියලා ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ නේ. I couldn't actually share the whatever PDF with you, so that's why they have come and done it. So basically the first question is how the SMEs can contribute to the development of economy. That's what the initial question. Now we have kind of an answer. Any other thoughts? What do you have? Any thoughts, Sanjeev and Shenuka? So we have only two of you for today's last presentation, last class. Any other thoughts or any kind of gray area that you need to clear? So generally we are getting this type of questions, right? So we might get a question like why do you think SMEs are important? What is SMEs role in Sri Lankan, like, or in a development country, like a country like Sri Lanka, or maybe why the SMEs you think has significance in play in reviving the economy. So there may be a different question but the same answer. So you can use this answer that what we have discussed, or you can refer our notes, and there again you can get a kind of a bigger idea about the role or the contribution of SME. Any thoughts? Shenuka, Sanjeev, you are okay with the answer? Any gray area? Okay. What about Shenuka? Okay, so let's proceed to part 2. I hope that you can see the my PDF where the question of 2019 March we are discussing question number 3, 19 March part 2. They ask about 6 policy interventions. What exactly the government has done to promote SMEs? They basically ask policy interventions. Any thoughts? What they have done to promote SME, or SME culture, SME policy framework? Policy intervention. Any thoughts? What the government have done, has done? Loans as concession rates, yes, right? Any other? Yeah, you can cluster it under a different segment, because this is actually the first time coming, so I'll share the answer with you. The 6 items is, first one is enabling environment. Enabling environment. It basically tells that government is trying to make a kind of an environment which is friendly for SME players, maybe in terms of tax, maybe in terms of say other benefits, maybe incentives, right? And like that, so they try to make a kind of more user-friendly environment for SME players. So that's number 1, enabling environment. Number 2, technology and innovation. That even right now also you can see, the government is trying to at policy level, right, promote some technology and sort of innovation. So they promote innovative ideas, and they they try to bring down some technology, introduce technology for SME players, so that they can learn it and they can make a kind of bigger impact, right? So like example, rather than just say exporting paper, so they try to introduce some value addition to the paper. I mean, in terms of agri, it could be something or innovation or with the introduction of the technology. So that's what the government focus is. It's a policy level intervention. Third one, entrepreneurial culture and skill development. Entrepreneurial culture and skills development. So that's again something where, the policy level, the government, come up, right? Rather than you dependent on, say, buying and selling, you try to promote entrepreneurships, right? So even you might have introduced some, say, academic programs and maybe some kind of functions to, assess or appraise them like that. So basically, entrepreneurial culture and skills development and another policy intervention the government has, initiated. And then the other one is access to finance. That's what Sanjeev mentioned. They have, introduced so many things to say create access to finance. Maybe as you were telling, so introduce concessionary funding. So recent past also we can see, so many refinancing lines have been introducing. Because why? So at low cost, entrepreneurs can go get the money and invest in the business. That's very good, right? So fourth one. Fifth one, market facilitation. Now, yes, so you promote everything and you ask them and you give money at concession rate, and so let them to, come up with products. And if you are not supporting at the next level, finding markets, developing market, linking market, right? Maybe like opening up for export market. So that's again not a easy task for one single entrepreneur to wade through. So hence, they have promoted, right, a market facilitation as well. Finally, R&D, research and development. So that's again, it might be needed, because when you say R&D, small SMEs, small entrepreneurs may not be able to, continue with the R&D. So they might be able to start it, but there should be some institutional support, a place, a guidance, checking, sort of validation. So those things to be done by somebody else, and even to get the patent sometimes, because you can do everything, but you don't know how to get the patent, how to reach it, what are the documentation and legal sort of requirement, regulatory requirement. That advices should also be done, but some at higher level, maybe country level. So that may be through a R&D. So basically, what I am now discussing is now national policy framework. The government has come up with some policy interventions for SME development. There are 6 items. So first one, enabling environment, technology and innovation, entrepreneurial culture and skills development, access to finance, R&D. Those are the 6 things that we need to know. So the first question is basically the contribution of SME. The second one is, what does the government do in terms of enabling, in terms of promote, in terms of policy implementation? So that is the 6 things that we have just discussed. Any gray area, any clarification on those 6 items? Sanjeev, is it clear? Shanuka, clear? Is there any way we can refer for common questions? What do you mean? I didn't get. What do you mean common question? Policy frameworks. Sanjeev, can you, use the mic? Can you use the mic?
Hi, sir.
Yeah, hi. Yeah.
The thing is, it's the second question. It's a common question, right? Because it's asked about the government support towards the SME development. So, is there any way where we can refer any documents so it will make us easy to answer for questions like this?
Right. Actually, this I was trying to also get through this document, but what happened was this is still under the draft stage, because now they have come up with, under industries and commerce, they have developed the definition for the SME. So actually, if you, let's say, refer about these industries and commerce, and then semi when you go to the Google and all that, you can find some, but actually this has not been said what do you call we published it in official way. So that's why actually we also miss this when we discuss in the the past papers or the general lessons, right? This suddenly come up, and when you see also these things also, we might know this, but we are not in a position to put it in this way, right? So many students actually could not be able to answer because this was the first question in this way. But going forward, let's say when you are answering that also, that you can you need not to have these 6 in this way, but you also can come up with a similar sort of approach, right? Because now if you say what's the if the general question like what the government the support towards SME, what the government can do in terms of promoting SME, in terms of developing SME, again you can write these 6. But now they say it's a policy intervention kind of those things, but when you see one by one, this is not only the policy right? Because you were telling about offering or accessing concessionary rates financing to the SME. In other words, is something access to financing, right?
Yes.
So the answer could be correct, but since that they have come up and they have mentioned these are the 6 policy level, very high level initiatives. Going forward, we also align under these segments. When you say access to finance, example, say refinancing lines kind of. Say R&D examples, say promoting R&D culture, say promoting or facilitating say patent access process kind of thing. So like that, so we will have our answers as examples, and then we will say this is like more or less strategic level initiatives going forward. But if I got to know, I'll share with you, because yet to get it in a published form. Actually we also came to know through these suggested answers, but these things are there. When you say what the government can do, a remedial action or government support to SME are more or less like these things. Say when you say technology and innovation, yes, entrepreneurs will do, but they can't do in the mass scale, because very in micro level they can do, but there should be somebody at top, like even to refer directly this time when they are making even the ministries, there are state minister in terms of R&D, in terms of innovative, in terms of say supporting SME like that. So that's not the government say policy level sort of thing, but yet to come up in a document.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for asking that question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Now we are moving to the part 3. What are the challenges faced by the banks in financing SME? So can you think about 1 or 2 minutes and come up with, say here this question could come up with in several forms. It could be challenges faced by the banks, challenges faced by the government, so challenges faced by the SME itself in accessing to SME financing, or granting SME loans, or maybe creating a kind of environment to support the SME like that. So there may be a same question could be asked in different forms. Here they ask about challenges faced by banks. In other terms, it's problems faced by banks in terms of financing SME. So take 1 or 2 minutes and come up with some points. So then we will discuss. So we have 2 people, you and Senuka, and then we'll see whether we can take 1 or 2 points, and then we can get an answer. Right. So take 1 minute or 2 minutes among you, and then discuss that. What are the challenges? What are the problems? What are the issues faced by banks when they want to finance SME? Any thoughts? Yeah, Sanjay, we have come up with the question answer. Yeah, non-performing advances. There's no proper source of income. People who are into tourism lack knowledge of SME people. Yes, couple of points. What about Shenuka? Any inputs from you? Right. So we'll share what the examiner has mentioned. One thing is lack of accurate financial and non-financial information. Basically, we prefer to get, say, very formal financial, transparent financials, complete financials, but we are unable to get it from the SME. So what could happen is, because we are unable to assess their financial capacity. That's one. Yeah, outdated technology, not having R&D, very good, right? Very good. You both have come up with very good points, right? So we'll discuss. Then number two, management is not driven by professionals. So they basically take very quick decisions, but they may be correct, but they are not take it in very thoughtful or strategic process. They think this is right and they do it, because one person may take a kind of a decision. There may be not so much research into that, and they just take a decision because maybe his friend was also doing that, or maybe his competitor is doing that, so he wanted to do it. So when you take that quick decisions, then you might end up with some problem. So it could be a management is not driven by professional. So absence of professional management, it could be another issue or challenge faced by banks. Then highly sensitive to market volatilities, because these SMEs, they can't basically set the market, or they are dependent on the market. So if something happened in the market, a high vulnerability of the business being impacted from these market volatilities. So it's a issue for us, because now we presume the turnovers and cash flows or basically based on the projection and in a given market condition. Suddenly the market is going to volatile and it's not happening as expected, then it could be impacted your cash flows and the bottom line and the the repayment capacity. So which could be an impact for you. Then, as Shenuka mentioned, is outdated technology, not having R&D. Those are some things that as bankers we in trouble, we in problem when assessing SMEs, and maybe no source of or sustainable income levels, right? As Sanjeev mentioned, because it could changing very frequently. So then you are unable to judge their prepayment capacity, right? Then things like getting funds from informal market, that's a critical one, because as banks you prefer they get money from banks or related financial institutions, but sometimes you learn that they have obtained money from outside banking channels. It could be through money lenders. So if it is so, what could happen here is then they are unable to judge their repayment capacity, right, and unable to pay off the debts as expected, because high cost borrowings are out there. And then another point could be they don't have a proper business plans, not like companies, they have vision, mission, objectives, and a kind of team to decide about way forward and business plan, strategies and all that. But SME, maybe one person, two persons taking a kind of decision, so they don't think about the business plan, proper management, like strategic management process kind of thing may not be available, may not be there basically. So those are the things that the banks would face in terms of financing SMEs. Hope that you have got it. So let's say the same question come up with in another way. What are the problems faced by the SMEs in terms of seeking financing from bank? What do you think? Any thoughts? Maybe this time the question be like that. Actually, when you refer some past papers, you can find that similar or related questions. So what if so? If the question is now in the borrower's court, what are the issues faced by the borrower when go to the bank? What are the problems? Here that we discuss about challenges or the issues, problems faced by the bank side, no? In other way, what could be the issues? You can suggest Sanjeev or Shanuka. Even we have now Nilushika as our third member. What are the issues faced by the borrower when they trying to get the financing from bank? Yeah. Yes, Sanjeev, you are very correct. No proper collateral to obtain loans because banks always prefer to get some form of collateral. Why? Because they perceive SMEs are risky, high risk category. Risk appetite towards SMEs sort of low. They perceive high risk. I mean, risk appetite is high. So they tend to avoid. So hence they prefer collateral. So no proper collateral is one. Number two, maybe interest rates could be relatively high compared to corporates. So SME prefer at very low interest rates. But when you go to the bank, they might charge a higher interest rates on you. Number three, they are unable to provide what you call maybe like consistent or maybe sustainable income sources, financials, business plans, because which the bank require in them. But they don't know how to prepare business plan, and they are not what you call consistent in preparation of financials, right? So those are some of the things that SMEs don't have. Any other? Yeah, project proposal is not accurate. Yes, because when you say business proposal, project proposal may not be accurate in terms of cost, in terms of income, in terms of cash flow, in terms of say structure. It's not complete or accurate. They just they don't have even knowledge for that. So then they get hold of some persons and then try to pay something and get it done. But when you go to the bank, then all the problems would occur. Another problem is a time taken by the banks to approve credit is too long, because then the business opportunity is over by then. Let's say they want to get the loan approved in say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but the bank sometimes took or maybe taking more than a month or two. So then the opportunity may have not been there once the loan is approved. Or maybe what do you call a cumbersome documentation, legal documentation process, right? Not easy to get the kind of the legal documents clear, legal title clear in terms of banks screening process, because you need to get say extracts for last 30-40 years, clear plans, approved plans, I mean connecting so complete sort of deeds like that. So they may ask all the questions, but as SME you are unable to provide all those things, so you may prefer to continue business, and whatever you have given to the bank, and you prefer the bank without going you putting a hassle and approve a credit is basically your expectation. But bank see it's in a different way. They see bit of risky, and so we need these documents to complete and all that, so will take time. Then once you take a longer time to approve a credit, so no point there, you are waiting for that. Another thing is, banks, perceived risk towards SME is high. That's again problem for SME. One bank perceived, SME are high risk animals compared to corporate. They think corporate, mid corporate are, less risky. So we can, go behind them and approve credit even. So that's why they offer low interest rates, low margins. But SME, they perceive high risk. That's in turn, it's an issue for you, because when you go to a bank and try to get a loan, they see, SME, right, risky. So probably, so they ask so many questions and all that. So they try to reject than approve a kind of credit. It's another issue faced by SME. And another point could be top management attitudes towards SME may not be very positive, because they prefer to give loans to, very good customers, corporate, mid corporate, where you have less headache, less NPL, less impairment, less provisions. They're easy to, manage your positions. When you go to the SME, probably you might have a bigger hits, though it's support to the government, economy, and SME country, but maybe they are not very much willing to move towards SMEs, right? Those are some of the, the problems faced by SMEs when they try to get financing from a bank. This question was, challenges faced by banks when financing SME. Similarly, examiner could ask about a problem faced by SMEs when they go and seek financing from banks. Then the fourth question, sources of financing for SMEs in Sri Lanka. The sources of financing for SMEs in Sri Lanka. What do you think? Because we have learned a lot, and then you can take that in addition, and you can think about some points. What are the sources? Microfinancing, yeah. Micro, yes, Sanjeev. To some extent, we can say microfinance is more or less sources of financing for micro enterprises and micro entrepreneurs. When you come to here, it's a bit of next level, small and medium. So ideally, microfinancing may not be an exact answer, because microfinance is aiming for micro entrepreneurs and micro enterprises. But it's correct in terms of micro, you can say SME financing, like term loans, working capital loans, right? Offered by banks is a source of financing for SMEs. So instead of micro, you can say it's something bank loans, advances, or maybe SME loans, SME advances are the proper answer. It's the proper answer. Hope Sanjeev, you got it. Any thoughts from Shenuka, Nilushika? What are the sources of financing? What are the sources of financing? One could be like Sanjeev mentioned and discussed, term loans and advances kind of thing. Yes, banks loans, leases, maybe even personal loans, pawning advances, because any form of advances the SME can get it. In addition that, they can use their own savings, retained earnings, or they can get a loan from a friend, they can get some money from a relative. It's a sources, or venture capital financing, and money lenders, and the supply credit, because they are creditors, so you can get some money from them. When you have a bit of creditors in the sense, so you can delay, because you need some time to pay off those creditors. So that money, in the meantime, you can use for your asset financing, like stocks and data financing. Yeah, angel investors, you're correct. Venture capital, angel investors are some not very much common in Sri Lanka, but that's like, as we learned prior to moving to the venture capitals, business angels are another form of financing. At a lower level of credit, they are there to support you. Money lenders, though we are not very much willing, but informal lines, there you can get the money. Here the question is not the correct or wrong, or not the proper method, but what are the sources? Even your friends, relatives, they can give some money. If you are employed, so you can get some money, whatever your savings, in terms of, and then you can invest, right? Okay. Any issues in this question? Actually, this is all about SME. SMEs actually they could ask about several areas, as we just discussed in the board a little while ago. So you need to be very much thorough on all those areas. I mean, section 1, 2, 3. Basically, we have dedicated to a bit of SME related financing, and then you need to go through those areas, because there are highly likelihood that we get 1 or 2 SME questions, right? So before moving to the next question, any further thoughts, views, clarifications that you need to get it? Any issues? Okay, Sanjeev. So let's move on. The next question that we can think about. Second is also a bit of part of a semi-related, and so we will move to this one. Price is also there. Yeah, this question we'll discuss about, not difficult but very important question. Right. Right. 2018 March. Actually, I have missed some part also, but I will share it with you. So briefly state the 5 C's of credit to evaluate the customers. What could be the answer? Briefly explain. So briefly state the 5 C's. So we have learned about 6 C's and 5 C's as well. So when you say 5 C's, we have only capacity. When you say 6 C's, we have capacity and cash flow. What you have to write here is you have to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 C's, and in terms of each C, what is the particular item, and then you can mention about one line statement on each C. I don't think it's a difficult question, but will you be able to answer that type of a question? Right. So when you say capacity, it's basically, if you take first one, capacity is basically we talk about ability of the firm, ability of the enterprise to repay the loan. It will see not only the debt service cover, like interest cover sort of thing. In addition, the capacity to generate or capacity to continue the business also looked into, right? If you remember, when you say 6 is capacity, cash flow. Cash flow is basically look into the availability of cash flow, debt service cover, interest cover, and all that to service the debt. When you say capacity, cash flow as two items. At that time, capacity is the ability of the firm to generate cash, to continue with the business, explore the market, manage the business. So all other qualitative aspects are looked under the capacity. Cash flow is basically quantitative items or in terms of business. So when you have two, we have capacity is one, cash flow is one. When you say 6 C's, but when you say 5 C's, you have one C, that is capacity, which include cash flow also. So when you are writing a statement, you might say a company's capability to run the business as well as pay the debts. When you say pay the debts, that's a cash flow. Run the business is you talk about qualitative aspects of the capacity. That's how you can describe the capacity. Collateral is basically refer is where what you could pledge as a security for what you have been asked for. Let's say it could be a second way out. The first way out is cash flow, but the second way out could be a collateral. So collateral is something where the lender can pledge against what he has been asked for, right? So you can write collateral is form of the security the entrepreneur can provide for what he has been asked for. For his loan advance, he can pledge it. Again, you can mention it's a secondary source of repayment. Secondary source of repayment. So that's a collateral that you have been mentioned. Third one, capital. Capital is owner's investment in the business. Owner's equity. It shows the commitment, obligation of the owner towards the business, right? Fourth one, condition. Overall economic and external condition, and the conditions that you are planning to incorporate in terms of structuring, right? Generally, we say conditions are external and internal. So external conditions like environment, economic, market, so which relevant to make your decisions. Together, also the terms and condition of the particular credit also part of this condition. Last one, character is basically the creditworthiness of the borrower, right? So basically, how trustworthy, how creditworthy the client is for your offering. So those are the 5 things actually we have discussed in the classroom also. We have given some definitions for this as well. But this is again over and over the examiner has asked us to just list it, describe 1 or 2 items, describe all items in one line. So you can get this 100% correct if the question is repeated next session, right? Then part 2 of the question is they ask, briefly explain each of the following types of lending. Give an example of a financial product relevant to each lending method, right? Though in my PDF you can't see it. Say part A is security based, part B cash flow based. So take a minute and first say define what is security based and give example. Define cash flow based, give an example, right? Take a minute among yourself and see whether you can do it. what do you understand by security base? I think we have discussed, but any thoughts? What is security base? Any example? Yeah, Sanjeev, correct. Mortgage, cash, mortgage loans, cash flow, OD. Yeah, you are correct with the answers. Security base is mortgage loans, cash flow base, OD, working capital. That's correct. So when you are defining security based lending is lending against what? Underlying security, asset. Asset based lending, collateral based lending, security based lending are a common, I mean a same. So if basically making loans against some collateral like pawning, like cashback overdraft, like loan against property, are all facilities against collateral. Those are called security based lending. And cash flow based lending is basically loans against anticipated cash flow, right? A loans against impending cash flow, a loans against a future cash flow, like working capital financing, say debtor financing, say stock financing. Is one form of the cash flow based lending. In terms of debtor, what happened? If you take factoring, so you will discount the factoring proceeds today and expecting the factoring proceeds to come in future and get your loan settled, right? So that cash flow based lending is where you think about you getting something in future and you advance it today for customers day-to-day financing needs. Hope you have got it understood. Any questions? Tarushika, welcome. What about Shenuka? You got it clear? Tarushika, you are okay with that answer? Because we have discussing some SME type of questions and then we have moved to right. Thanks, Tarushika, and thanks, Shenuka. And we are moving to a bit of client evaluation area. Today is basically our last day of this session. And next week onwards, actually, they are going to start the revision classes. But in the meantime, if you do have any questions, that I'll share my details so that you can, straight away contact me and get whatever the things cleared when you are undertaking whatever past papers and theory detail. So we have 1.5 months to go. I mean, whole October and half of the November prior to the exam, so that you can start working from the beginning, and then you can try the maximum possible questions. And then if something that you come across, please let me know so that we can get it clear then and there, even during the holidays, right? Okay. Then the part 3 of the question. Briefly explain with examples the main characteristics and purpose which each of the following financial products would be offered to customers. They have given 2 products and we to mention what are the main features and the purpose for which products would be offered, right? So the examiner now just not asking to write a short note, but he wanted the features of the product and the purpose of offering. Product is pledge loan, one. Second one's overdraft. Pledge loan and overdraft. So let's take a minute and think about what are the features of the pledge loan and what is the purpose of offering. What are the features of overdraft and what is the purpose of offering. So take 2 minutes among you and think it, and then we will discuss as a team. So pledge loan, what do you think? What are the features and what are the purposes? Sanjeev, Tarushika, even you can use the mic and writing, you can use the mic. What do you think? Bailment of goods as security, yes, that's a pledge, right? And what purpose benefit the company is having? Stocks as mortgage, so then what basically what it gets? Right, basically it's like this. Now pledge loans, basically it could be used for working capital needs of entrepreneurs or the SME businesses. That's one. And how it basically happen is, so it'll take in charge of say stocks, raw materials, finished goods in the firm as a collateral in terms of giving advances against that. So what actually could do for the entrepreneur is, so instead of going for another security to get the money, so this basically gives you more control as well as a lenient, advantage to get the financing and get it sold, get the money back and settle it like. So why basically I'm telling in that way is, let's say you have a stock mortgage, and when you get the money against that, when the stock is releasing, you get the money back in terms of data or whatever, and then you can settle your advances, right? So that's the advantage of pledge, because you need not go for any other security. So because it's easy, because the bank can use it and get the insurance and those things assigned, and even you have a better control because you know that stocks are there, stocks coming down means gradually settlement of your loans, like, right? Exactly how the answer of the examiner is, this product is useful for working capital financing. We are pledge of goods, like Tarushe mentioned, taken as security for the facility, thereby giving a lesser burden to the promoter, offering a security. Because what happens is, if you don't have sort of a security collateral, then you are unable to get this, get an advance from a bank. But here, because you have current assets called stock, WIP, finished goods, that itself makes a security. So you can pledge it to the bank and get the money. This allows the promoter to stock seasonal materials, finished goods, to have better margins in using different periods by settling part by part of the facility and taking the maximum utilization of the material stock pledge. Because when you have, say, stock, raw materials, finished goods as a mortgage, as a pledge, when you are like selling, you can settle your advances because you have a better control also. Need not to have a security. This will support your working capital financing also. So that is the kind of answer that we need to build. So we need to mention what is pledge and bit of advantages and kind of features, and where the purpose basically that you use this pledge facility. Okay, hope that you have got it. Any questions? Right, then OD. Get a minute and think about what is OD and how we are going to use. What are the features? I think we have done it several times in the class, but again, the examiner asking in a more formal way. So we need to mention sort of characteristics, features, together with the purpose of the overdraft. What are the, how do we write it? So again, it could be a product for working capital financing. So the like features is, no need to settle it as once. Yes, Sanjeev, POD, TOD to support working capital. Yes, some features, right? The type of OD, and basically it's a working capital requirement. And also you can mention where in case of project financing that you need not to pay it off at once. So you can gradually reduce. Whenever you have, you can reduce. Whenever you want, you can draw it out. So like that, that might facilitate some of your working capital items, especially like your overhead financing, maybe salary bill, maybe electricity, water, utility bills. So if you need to pay that, so it's not basically like a pledge loan, like stock disposing and settling, because sometimes in monthly it's happening, bi-weekly, fortnight, it's happening, right? Then and there, maybe contract payments have to be done, contract employees to be paid like that. So you do it maybe month end that it gets settled like that, right? So basically without having a constant repayment amount payable as installment will help the promoters to finance fluctuating working capital requirement of the project, because now we have say working capital needs like permanent or fluctuating. So permanent, no harm. So you can take a term loan and to repay that because it's permanent, constant, stagnate. But the fluctuating working capital, you can't always take a term loan and repay it, or STL may not be matching exactly, but POD could be a good financial instrument. So then and that go up, go down, go up, go down during the project period. So then it's an ideal product. Whenever you have money, you can settle it. And for that, you need not to pay interest. Whenever you want, you can ask for an OD amount. So that basically, this helps the promoter repay, settle entire advance at once when the sales project is realized, rather than making regular payment as installment. Because installment loans, installment payments are not necessary. If you get a bigger bulk payment by month, then you settle it for zero. Then you redraw it up, down, like so, then you pay it off. But if it is a term loan, you need to have a dedicated regular monthly payments, which may not be possible during the kind of project period, even after that, right? Depending on the requirement, right? But let's say pledge loan, it's ideal for some current asset financing because you know when the stock is realized. But some expenses like overhead expenses and all that may not be happening regularly, or you can't have a timeline, say each month and I have to pay, each month and I have to pay. No, not like installments. There may be a kind of fluctuations, up downs, depending on your cash flows. So for that, this is ideal product, right? Also, as Sanjeev mentioned, we can say overdraft, there are type of OD, POD, TOD, casual OD, for depending on different customer requirements. That is also any way to support customer working capital cycle. And this is another sort of advantage where the customer can use of. Instead of 1 year POD, they can go for temporary order after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Or they can, take 3-4 day casual excesses because it's very short term bound. But when you go for a term loan, when you go for a bridging, when you go for a short term, so that might not be possible because it's like more short, medium to longer. But here, some kind of expenses could be financed through OD product. Any questions? Any thoughts? Right. Then we move to the other part that actually I want you to do a question because this time actually they are asking several type of questions on this, right? Always we see this type of this part. We have information for company A, company B. Sorry, company A 2016-2017 turnover, cost of goods sold, overheads, debtor, creditor, raw material cost, right? And calculate the following: inventory conversion, receivable conversion, payable conversion, operating cycle, cash conversion. So each part get 1 mark. So you need to complete all 5 to get 5 marks. So take a couple of minutes and see whether you can compute these 5, because it's one last time that we are trying to do this, and see whether you can do it. Right. Inventory conversion, receivable conversion, payable conversion, operating cycle, and cash conversion cycle. Because we have the answers there anyway. Answers there in the sense that we have done it a couple of times earlier also. See whether that you can do it. Right. If you do have a question, just raise me. Otherwise, you can continue. You know what's a equation for inventory conversion? That is average stock divided by cost of goods sold into 365. Because why? It's only for year 2017. So then you are using average stock divided by cost of goods sold into 365. See whether you can get the answer. Okay. What is the answer for first one? Inventory conversion. Sanjeev, Tarushika. Sanjeev, yeah, coming with 71.7, right? What about Tarushi? Shenuka? What is your answer? Sanjeev, you can conclude the second and yeah, 72 days. Yeah. What about Tarushi? Shenu and Sanjeev, you can continue with the part B and see like that. Tarushi, you got 75. Why it is so? It's around 71 and 72. The equation should be average stock divided by cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is 25.45, right? Is it okay? For 2017, cost of goods sold is 25.45, right? That's correct, right? And then what is the average stock for the computation? What you have taken, Abhishek? It's 4.75 plus 5.25 divided by 2. No, Tarushi, you need to get average stock. Why? Because if you are, as we learned earlier, if we comparing year on year, you need not to take the average stock. But here they have asked particularly 2017, right? So then we need to get the average stock. Yeah, 4.75 plus 5.25 divided by 2, it's 5. Divided by 25.45 into 365. Then you will be getting the correct answer. Is it? You can speak up, Tarushi. Yes, if it's not very much clear on the text chat, you can speak up. So yeah, the answer then 71.7. Basically, it's correct with Shenuka. Now Tarushi, you also done. Sanjeev, yes, you have done it. Then go to the part B, receivable conversion period. How much was that? Then their average debtor divided by turnover into 365. So what could be the answer? What are your answers, Sanjeev? 55.35. And yes, it's correct. Shenuka, what I have got? You can continue, Sanjeev. Other three. Very good, Tarushi. I hope that Shenuka also that got the same answer. Anything different, please let me know so that, yeah, correct. 55.36, very correct. Thank you. And then we move to the payable, and then quickly we will compute operating cycle and cash conversion. Let me have those answers as well. Then we know for sure that we are done with whatever the question in that nature. Yeah, Sanjeev, yeah, 127 is operating cycle, right? So the payable conversion is 58, Sanjeev, right? Payable could be like 58. Is it? Right, correct. Hope that it's same with Tarushi and Shenuka. And then the operating cycle is 128, 127. Fine. And then what's the cash conversion? Sanjeev, 50. Yeah, what's the cash conversion then? Yeah, Shenuka, it's correct. 69 days is the cash conversion. Tarushi, are you okay with that? Okay, thanks. Basically, you know, we may get that type of a question also, like part of theory and part of mathematics kind of thing. But don't worry, because sometimes it could be current assets, current liability, working capital, maybe efficiency ratios, right? So we may be part of the main question, right? So then we'll see another question. Michael, I don't think it's so difficult. You can read through. See. We'll do this one sometimes. Yeah, this one we will do because this again we because this has been asked on September 2018. So probably after 2 years that they may ask the kind of similar question this time. But this is again not difficult because we have done it. But you know, these type of questions would be very much common in time to come, right? They basically ask about briefly explain the PESTEL, state why the PESTEL is important for the entity, then SWOT analysis, compare SWOT with PESTEL. So this is the kind of a question that we got it. Maybe the next time the question could be sometimes, write a sort of a short note or the brief analysis on SWOT and the PESTEL, and they might ask about a particular occasion and apply SWOT analysis into that, or maybe PESTEL analysis and PESTEL analysis into a particular sector. We have done it in the classroom also, and then you need to do it, practice it before going to the exam. Or they might this time they might ask about Porter's 5 forces model, and you describe and briefly comment, and they might ask about the application of the Porter's 5 forces into a given scenario. So that type of a question could be very much possible, right? So here, when you say briefly explain PESTEL, it's not difficult. You know what is P, what is E, what is S, what is T, L, and E. So we have given the short notes also. When you say the political, this basically tells the extent to which government and government policy may impact on an entity or specific industry. This would include political policy and stability, as well as trade, fiscal, and taxation policies too. So when you say political, checklist also tells you some points. Basically, what is the political orientation, right? Political environment in a given situation, which could have an impact to a particular entity or the industry. That's what we see under the political. So about political decision, political culture, about a bit of taxation, and about trade policy, fiscal policy, and maybe import-export policy. So like basically that the political environment in a given situation. That's what it says. When you say E for economic, economic basically impact on the economy and its performance, which in turn directly impacts on the entity and its profitability. Factors like interest rates, employment, unemployment rate, foreign exchange rates, raw material cost, inflation, balance of payments are the economic factors, or maybe GDP growth, economic growth, or maybe a GDP particular sector contribution are economic impact, right? So like employment rate, unemployment, unemployment rate or employment rate, interest rates, foreign exchange rates, raw material cost, and inflation, balance of payment, GDP growth are the economic factors that we need to consider. Because when we see the impact of these economic factors into a particular sector or particular industry or entity is what we are interested in. Now, in these days, you see a reduction in economic interest rates, which will obviously have a positive impact on industries. So sometime back, we see high interest rates, which have negative impact, obviously, into the new entity or the ongoing entity. That's what we need to see. What is E and what type of points underlying checklist that we feel important in terms of entity, in terms of sector. Social factors. These factors focus on the social environment and identify emerging trends. This helps the entities to further understand their customers' needs and wants. Factors includes, now say social factors is basically social environment and social trends. What is the prevailing social environment and social trends? Say upcoming social trends. That's what we talk about, social. And so this might impact on customer needs, wants, preferences. And what are those factors? Like changing family demographics, changing family demographics, educational levels, cultural trends, attitude change, lifestyle change. So those are the social factors, not like our ancestors, our grandparents, our parents, even our era may not be the same in time to come. It might have changed a lot about the way of thinking, attitudes, preferences, cultural things, and about educational level, demographics are some social factors that you need to consider. So will have an impact on your product, on your service, on the way you are planning to conduct your business in your entity, or recruitment process, a training and development. So all will have an impact. You got it? Right. Then technological factors. These factors consider rate of techno innovation and development that could affect the entity or industry. So technological factors will look into the rate of change of the technology and the innovation in a given situation. So factors like information, digital or mobile technology, automation, R&D, waste removal, recycling, transportation. If you remember, what are the technological appraisal when you do project evaluation? So that is a kind of a common thing. That's the basic. So you also can think it and you can come back here. What are the changes in R&D? What are the changes in information provision? What are the changes in digital mobile platform technology? What are the changes in transportation, logistics? Changes in waste removal, recycling. So these obviously have an impact on your processes, your products, even on your people. So in an entity, in the industry, in a sector, right? So we have to think about, let's say if you are into say IT, but if you know that so many changes happening in the IT sector about technology to way of offering to communication and all that. So you need to follow that. Even I was telling that in an example in a class where let's say you are offering mobile telephone on analog form, maybe in 90s. But still, if you think, no, I am not going to move the digital, though the world is going to change digital, I am into the analog. Will it give you a proper answer? No. You may be outdated because everything is happening in digital, even digital now, the 3G, 4G, 5G, and so forth. So you need to move on that. The customers now say maybe your suppliers, buyers, now they are ready with that. But you need to then. That's what you need to have, and what's happening, changes in the technological. Legal. Entity must understand what's legal and allowed within the territories they operate in. They also must be aware of any change in legislation and impact this may have on operations. Factors include employment legislation, consumer law, health and safety law, international as well as trade regulation and restrictions. Very important, because legal is something. So you need to see what is the legal environment, legal regulation, legal impact on our operations, on our processes, on our people, on the processes or on the things that what we do, even the products. So the things like consumer law, industrial law, employment legislation, very important, maybe country to country, time to time, those things could be changed. Then health and safety law, international regulations. So you need to understand what are those, even trade restrictions, trade regulations. Recent past actually we have come to know that US is banning some Chinese companies about kind of some transaction. So example, now the particular company is working with port city, the financial city. So then there may be some issues when say US is putting sanctioning restrictions, then what is our position? So if we have funded, if we are dealing with that particular company, what is the legal position? Even the ongoing basis that you need to be worried with, right? Last one, environmental. These factors relate to the influence of the surrounding environment and the impact of ecological aspects. Environment, like ecologically, this element is becoming more important. Factors, climate, recycling procedure, carbon footprint, waste disposal, sustainability, because now the corporate social responsibility is one of the key aspects in a firm. So whenever you are doing something, you need to think about these factors. Say as a bank, we are going to finance, then you think about what is the impact of the project towards the environment, about how they are going to do recycling, waste disposal, and about climate impact, recycling, carbon footprint if it is involved in the manufacturing to that area. So then you need to understand what are the factors, how the impact could be. Maybe not at the initial level, there may not have any, there were not any impact to the environment at the starting of the project, but ongoing, now you see new regulations are coming, world is changing towards the environmental trends. So you need to learn and apply accordingly, because otherwise you might have some troubles in continuing your business. So that's basically, that's the type of answer that you need to come up with. Briefly explain the PESTEL, because it's a very good area, because we have not done too much on that, but in going forward, these type of questions could be very important. Part B, why PESTEL is important in terms of entity, in terms of industry, in terms of sector. So basically, I will list out what the examiner mentioned with a brief explanation. PESTEL is concerned with the outside environment, which include law, physical environment, customs, ethics, and population. So basically, so the PESTEL is dealt with outside the company, outside the projects, like country's law, the population, ethics, cultures, right? Those things. So then important, because as I was telling, in terms of PESTEL, we are not trying to do a PESTEL analysis for a smaller ticket size. But if the project is big, if we think that it has a bigger impact on the society, industry, government to country, then you need to think about the impact in a macro level. That's why the PESTEL is important. Those doing business would find the results of the analysis extremely valuable. Information can determine whether there should be an expansion or just a consolidation of the business, because when you are trying to do a business in a bigger way, so these analyses are important. So based on the analysis, you might think about whether you are trying to expand, whether trying to consolidate your business. To that extent, these analyses are important. PESTEL analysis can help make the decision whether or not a particular region holds any potential for profitable business. Remember, now when you talk about political, economical, social, blah blah, all that, when you have this analysis on your table, then you might think about I'm putting up a hotel in this area, may be profitable or may not be profitable, because the social costs are higher than the project outcome, or maybe environmental costs are much higher than what you call the economic or other financial benefits that you are getting. So you might shelve the idea. Basically, no point of moving that area. Example, say you are putting up a garment factory, but when you think about the bringing the labor from different area, which may be a bigger cost in terms of labor, to hiring, to keeping up them, to security, to health and safety, and all that may not be viable, right? So then you may not be in a position, or better to shelve the project or the idea. Any market has the potential for good or bad, and the analysis helps weigh things in a very objective balance, right? When you say in the market analysis, we say good or bad. But when you are undertaking this PESTEL in terms of outside view, so you might see in which way we need to proceed, the correct objective, right? Good, bad, weigh good and bad, right? Cost benefit, and then say this is the way forward. Or maybe example that you are targeting to local market to export market. So sometimes once you evaluate everything, so it might gives you an impression local market may not be possible because at this cost factors and the economic impact and all that. So you better you produce and start with the export market, right? Because we may not be ready, our social and cultural may not be ready with that particular product or service to be catering to the local, but it may be ideal for the foreign market initially. So later you can come up with for the local market, then maybe the whatever value system and all that the requirements of society, local society might have come up. Pestle analysis encourages strategic planning and provides the necessary data. So because this would provide us the strategic planning, strategic direction, because when you are say the company, you just like start a kind of project and you are continuing, you might not be able to get a say proper vision which way that you are going to head in. But when you are undertaking the pestle sort of analysis, then you exactly know what is there for me today and tomorrow, and based on that you can create your business plan, create your business strategy, company strategy, and then in 5 years, 10 years, where that we can do and where we have to go like that. So those things to be done based on data that could be extracted through this extensive analysis of this pestle. But otherwise, right, if you are not undertaking a detailed industry study, market study, environmental study, or political to that extent, you may not be knowing what will happen for the tomorrow. So you might think about, so I am going to have say 5-star, 7-star hotel sort of thing, and you need to know what is the government vision. Or you might plan in something to do import and do a kind of a business, and then you think about as a project is very viable, but when you see the government next 5-year plan, they want to restrict imports. You can't import these items. So probably if you put up machine and all that to cater that type of products, which may not be feasible. Once you know, then you think about this is my plan for next 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 years. Right. Basically, now what I have to discuss finally with you is since that we have come to a kind of a conclusion of a 4-month session, I suppose. I'm not exactly sure that how best that we can disseminate our information through this online platform, right? I expect that it's maybe not 100%, but to some extent actually we could interact each other and we could be able to share kind of some reasonable outcome in this online exercise. So we are yet to conclude some revision exercise maybe during the next month. This is a part of the exam plan of the institute. So now it's up to you to go through maybe initially maybe the presentations that we and the notes that share, and next is basically most important thing is the past papers. As I was telling you last week, take last 5-6 past papers, and then you can get to know sort of the clusters where most of the questions focused on different areas, maybe like SME, maybe microfinancing, maybe SIG businesses, or maybe project financing, working capital, and break even like that. So focus more on that, do some more questions, or even you can do whatever questions we did in the class. And if you come up with something like any difficult area, you may contact me and get that things cleared. So I will share with my whatever office email, so that even when you want some kind of stuff, I can share. And also we share with my contact numbers also, most probably that I am having my whatever past papers and all that in the office. If you do have any sort of questions during the next month or so, so we can share that as well. And I see this is anyway, it's a new normal sort of test. I don't see things are so much disadvantage for us, because even the exam, I also think maybe what do you call average, it's easy paper, because everybody is in trouble, and I don't see examiners also put us in trouble. But don't take things very easy. Take your maximum effort and target for a distinction, because I haven't seen any students got failed even whatever up to last session actually. Or the pass rates like more than in IBSL is something more than 80, 85. So I mean, we need to maintain that record this time as well. But if you do have any questions, again, you can contact me at any time. Share my email and the contact numbers, and also you can start with sessions at maybe lectures and the presentations initially, and then if you do have any questions, please refer to me. And then also get some last 6-7 past papers and see what are the common questions, like areas, maybe SME, maybe SIG business, maybe YCs, like that. So have a cluster, go through the questions and answers, then come up with more a model. Like here SME I have drawn here. This is what maximum the examiner has asked us. Then go to the SIG business, go to the 5Cs, go to the break even, go to the microfinancing, right? So I have dealt some of the things is while we are doing the lecture, but again you can come up with, and if you do have any questions, any gray area, please let me know, so that then and there also we can share and get the things settled. So thank you very much being with me for about last 4 to 4.5 months. I wish everybody well in coming exam, and again I expect you don't need to be with me the revision, because I think the same thing I'm going to do with the revision class. So if you do have any sort of things, as I was telling, please let me know, so that we can get the things cleared and settled there. So again, I am sharing my the email here, and my direct number also I will share. And if you do have anything, you can call me and get the thing sorted out. Right. Thank you so much again. Have you a very bright future ahead. We might meet up in some time to come. So any about your job related or whatever sort of thing, please do in touch with me. So thank you again. Have a good time ahead. Okay.